Space now with my colleague Silindelo Masikane, who's inside court. Silindelo, very good afternoon. Well, another day in court in the sense of Meyiwa Murder Trial, and Sergeant Mthethwa was the second state witness, and he's wrapped up today.
He has officially been excused from the witness box, Bradan, so he has completed testimony here in the North Gauteng High Court. Just about 2 days that was spent with Sergeant Mthethwa, who began his testimony yesterday, in fact, and what we of course know from coming out of it is the fact that there are some discrepancies that are being raised in terms of time frames, in terms of when forensic investigator Sergeant Thabo Mosia arrived, to the fact that the crime scene was left unattended after the call was made to the police for them to attend to what he described as a shooting in progress. For much of the cross-examination, of course, it was a grilling, much like what we saw with Mosia, in terms of the granular details about what they did in terms of Sergeant Mthethwa and his colleague, Sergeant Matebula, as well as two student officers, we understand, that accompanied them on their initial arrival to the scene. We know that they did not secure it when they first arrived, and in fact proceeded to the hospital, and only after they returned was the crime scene then secured. But what's also come out in cross-examination are two witness statements or affidavits from the neighbors that were obtained that actually say that during that period in which Mthethwa and Matebula were at the hospital, there were people who proceeded to basically clean the crime scene, Bradan. They mopped the floors, they cleared the house of beer cans, and this was put to Mthethwa, who was first disagreeing with the fact that that could have happened, but said that if it did, it had to have happened before he even arrived in the first place initially. It was also put to him with regards to the exhibits that were found at the crime scene. He had mentioned that as the police, they noticed the bullet projectile on the floor, but the hat, it was Gladness Khumalo, Kelly Khumalo's mother, who had told them that it belonged to the perpetrator. Another interesting fact coming out is the fact that no blood was noticed on the floors of the house, but rather blood splatters on the wall.
Yeah. So from your perspective, I mean, did Sergeant Mthethwa have a hard time in trying to remember some of the details that happened way back in 2014?
So far, it does seem as though those who have been called to the stand, in particular Mosia as well as Mthethwa, are indicating that some things they simply can't remember, which is why, in fact, Sergeant Mthethwa was asked to bring his pocketbook. But we were told when proceedings began this morning that the police as well as Mthethwa could not locate that pocketbook, and in fact, the only records they have of pocketbooks date back to about 2016. So it seems that those pocketbooks were probably disposed of, we don't know, but that those pocketbooks really have those granular details around the timing and exactly what police do when they arrive on the scene. So unfortunately, we don't have access to those pocketbooks, and we just have the statements as well as their memories in this case. But I think what stands out is the fact that the defense has, I think, shown the court that those police officers who were first on the scene were, one, not skilled enough or had a high ranking enough to be able to attend to such a crime scene, but that the crime scene itself was poorly managed, which meant that the investigations were probably the same way.
There's a lot of contamination, according to defense, of the scene of the crime in 2014, and we also had heard earlier that there was a delay to the time when the police actually arrived there. And on Monday, I mean, I understood, Leslie, that this time around the court has set 2 weeks for this trial. Monday will then mean it's a second week. What do we expect to happen on Monday? Do we have any inkling who the state might call as its next witness after Mosia and Mthethwa?
Well, of course, on Monday we expect the state's third witness to take to the witness stand. At this point, I do have an idea of who's going to be there, but all I can tell our viewers is that it is going to be somebody who was in the house.
So one of the people who was in the house, because remember the reference to docket 375, when this week the trial resumed, was a big issue that Advocate Mshololo brought to court in an application.
Yes, so we know, of course, that at play here are two dockets, and the one that's been prosecuted right now, brought down, is docket 636, that accuses these men of having a case to answer to, that they were the ones responsible for the shooting and the killing of Senzo Meyiwa. But of course, docket 375, that particular docket then speaks to the fact that the ones in the house actually have a case to answer to, and that someone in the house actually shot and killed Senzo Meyiwa. So at some point, we also know, Bradan, that the investigating officer of docket 375 will be called to the stand by the defense to clarify some issues around that statement from Brigadier Ndlovu, because we know Brigadier Ndlovu is no more, but the investigating officer was the one who actually commissioned that statement. So at some point, we will also be hearing from the investigating officers of docket 375.
Yes, but that's not on Monday. On Monday, though, one of the people who's said to have been in the house at the time of the Senzo Meyiwa murder is expected to be taking the stand from Monday. Thank you very much, Silindelo Masikane. We'll, of course, unpack further the developments in court today in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. For now, if you've just